Have you ever walked down a street so quiet you could almost hear the silence? That was the case on one particular street in Seattle. It was a place where everyone kept to themselves, life moving in a predictable, unchanging rhythm. Every morning, rain or shine, a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Parker would walk her little dog, Daisy, down this very street. Her route always took her past the old corner house, a place most neighbors actively avoided. The lawn was a jungle of overgrown weeds. The paint on the walls was peeling away like old memories. The mailbox dangled precariously as if it had given up waiting for good news. Inside that forgotten house lived Mr. Lewis, a widower in his late 70s. He was a phantom in his own home. Since his wife passed away years ago, he had faded from the community's view. No lights flickered in his windows at night, no cars pulled into his driveway, and the sound of laughter was a distant echo. There was only a profound, heavy silence. One crisp morning, as Mrs. Parker and Daisy made their usual rounds, she saw something unusual. Mr. Lewis was struggling, his frail arms trembling as he tried to carry heavy grocery bags from his old weathered truck to his front door. She paused. She knew the neighborhood whispers that he preferred to be left alone, that he was a recluse who didn't want to be bothered. But a gentle voice inside her, the same voice that had guided her through decades of teaching, whispered, "Kindness never needs an invitation." Taking a breath, she walked toward him, offering the warmest smile she could muster. "Need a hand, Mr. Lewis?" she asked gently. He looked up, startled. His eyes, clouded with a mix of surprise and suspicion, met hers. He seemed to search her face for a hidden motive, but all he found was genuine concern. After a long moment, he gave a small, hesitant nod. Together, in a comfortable silence, they carried the bags inside. The whole exchange took less than 5 minutes, but that simple act of reaching out was like a key turning in a long-rusted lock. It was the beginning of something much, much bigger. In the days and weeks that followed, Mrs. Parker made it a point to check in on him. It wasn't anything grand. Sometimes she'd bring over a small plate of homemade cookies, still warm from the oven. Other times, she would just stop by for a few minutes of conversation, asking about his day or sharing a funny story about Daisy. Slowly, miraculously, the quiet house began to stir back to life. First, the curtains, once perpetually drawn, were opened, letting sunlight spill into the dusty rooms. Then faint sounds of a radio could be heard, and eventually, the most wonderful sound of all returned: laughter. A quiet, gentle laugh at first, but it was there. A faint warmth began to emanate from the once cold house, spreading out into the neighborhood. Then, one stormy afternoon, everything changed. A fierce squall barreled through Seattle, knocking out power and flooding the streets. Most people hunkered down inside, waiting for the storm to pass. When the power finally flickered back on across the neighborhood, Mrs. Parker noticed something unsettling. Every house on the street was lit up again, except for one. Mr. Lewis's house remained a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. A knot of worry tightened in her stomach. Without a second thought, she grabbed a flashlight, a thick blanket, and a thermos of hot soup, and braved the wind and rain to knock on his door. When he didn't answer, she let herself in, calling his name. She found him sitting alone in the pitch-black living room, shivering. His heater had broken. She draped the blanket over his shoulders, poured him a cup of hot soup, and simply sat with him, a quiet, reassuring presence in the dark. She stayed by his side until a repairman could arrive the next morning. What Mrs. Parker didn't know was that Mr. Lewis hadn't just been cold. He had been battling a deep, crushing loneliness and invisible illness that no one had ever thought to check on. Her simple, consistent acts of kindness didn't just warm him up. They gave him a reason to smile again, gave him a reason to want to live again. A few months later, anyone walking down that street would have been stunned by the transformation of the corner house. The lawn was neatly trimmed. Bright, cheerful flowers bloomed in the garden beds. The walls sported a fresh coat of paint, but the most beautiful change was the air itself. It was filled with the sweet, delicate fragrance of fresh roses that Mr. Lewis had planted with his own 2 hands, right under his window. When Mrs. Parker asked him why he'd gone to all the trouble, he just smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. He looked at the blooming flowers and then back at her. "Because," he said softly, "kindness has a fragrance, and it lingers longer than anything else. The story of the roses and their meaning didn't stay a secret for long. It spread from neighbor to neighbor, like a gentle breeze carrying a sweet scent. Inspired by Mrs. Parker's simple compassion, people started looking out for one another in a way they never had before. Teenagers started mowing lawns for their elderly neighbors. Families began bringing meals to those who were sick. People simply started checking in, asking, "How are you doing?" Truly meaning it. That one small spark of compassion had ignited a wildfire of community spirit. The street that once felt so silent and isolated now echoed with laughter, conversation, and a palpable sense of connection. And every time the spring breeze rustled through the trees, it carried the scent of Mr. Lewis's Resissa Constant. Beautiful reminder that a single, simple act of kindness has the power to change not just one life, but an entire community. In the end, it was never really about the cookies, or the groceries, or the repaired heater. It was about human connection. It was about seeing someone who is invisible and letting them know they matter. Because true kindness is like a fragrance. You can't see it, but you can feel its presence. It leaves a lasting impact on hearts and in memories. And long after the act itself is over, that beautiful scent remains, carried on the air for others to breathe in. So, be kind, even in the smallest of ways. You never know when your small gesture might be the very reason someone starts to believe in the goodness of the world again. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that celebrates the best of humanity. See you next time.